So as you know, we have launched Prime in March after public consultation and discussion also with our scientific committees. So when we developed the scheme, we had in mind the main goal was to foster the development of medicines with major public health interests, which is in a nutshell what Prime is about. And with this, we wanted to bring and reinforce the advice we provide to the company, both from a scientific and regulatory perspective, by fostering interaction earlier in the development and getting into contact with companies in order to help them optimize the development with a view to generate robust and high-quality data for the marketing authorization application. And all this early dialogue and support is expected also to facilitate the marketing authorization application assessment and enable an accelerated assessment. And as you may know already, for those of you familiar with Prime, one of the main criteria and the eligibility is that we use the same as the accelerated assessment criteria, so which shows the ultimate goal of enabling it. And we have built the scheme on this existing framework, and as I'll explain later, the criteria are close to those of accelerated assessment. So what are the main features of Prime? So this is a development support tool, and overall, what we believed were the main tools were, first of all, a written confirmation of eligibility, and the potential for accelerated assessment in itself is an important feature of the scheme. One of the key changes as well is for Prime eligible product, the early rapporteur appointment. As you know, usually a rapporteur is appointed 6 to 7 months prior to marketing authorization. So with Prime, we're bringing this much earlier in the development in order to provide support to the applicant that has been granted eligibility to Prime. A very important and new feature of Prime as well is the so-called kick-off meeting. So upon eligibility, there will be a meeting organized with the applicant and with multidisciplinary stakeholders from the EU network involving different committee members relevant to the products in question. And as we build on the existing tools, one of the important aspects is the use of scientific advice and making sure that key issues and key development milestones are tackled through the scientific advice process, which, as you know, has shown that getting and following scientific advice then increases the chances of granting marketing authorization application. Each product granted eligibility to Prime will also benefit from a dedicated contact point at EMA, which is also different compared to the other products under development. And an important point as well is that SMEs and for the first time academic sponsors will benefit from 100% fee waiver on products eligible to Prime. So instead of 90% for the SME, this will be to 100% irrespective of the orphan drug status, for example. So these are in a high-level overview. I'll come back to some of those features a bit later in the presentation. There are, as you know, different time points to enter to Prime. The main one, and where we see most applications, is the what we call the proof of concept. So it is a time where there has been data generated showing a sound pharmacological rationale, and already data in patients from exploratory trials showing the response and having some preliminary safety data, and where we can see already a substantial improvement, and these should be clinically relevant outcomes, and obviously each request is judged on a case-by-case basis. But when we developed Prime, we were also conscious that the SMEs and academic sponsors who are an important source of innovation needed some additional support probably earlier in the development to guide them through the proof of concept. Although this may be a bit more exceptional than the proof of concept stage, we have this possibility for SMEs and academic sponsors to enter earlier on the basis of non-clinical data, as well as already from signs of some results on the tolerability in first-in-man trials. I'll give you a bit more detail later. So around the phase 1, then we would expect some SMEs to have sufficient evidence already to benefit from an early entry, and then help them to progress with confirmation then when exploratory data are generated later on during the development. this provides you an overview of the scheme. So we build this on the scientific advice being also a main tool. So upon eligibility, at the time of proof of concept, there will be appointment of the rapporteur, and there is this expectation that we will have iterative scientific advice, identifying the main issues, and having these regular interactions with the companies. We would provide enhanced regulatory guidance, and all this in order to prepare and making sure that the application then is of high quality and ready to be processed for accelerated assessment. So to give you a bit more detail on the eligibility criteria and the procedure. So as I said before, we have based the criteria on PRIME on the accelerated assessment. So according to the legislation, these are products that are of major public health interest, and in particular from the point of view of the therapeutic innovation. So there is the accelerated assessment guideline, which you may be familiar with, which defines as well this into the fact that such product for the perspective of PRIME as well is expected to have the potential to address to a significant extent an unmet medical need. And an unmet medical need from the legislation is defined when there is either no satisfactory method or if when methods are available, the product is expected to bring a major therapeutic advantage. And this is developed into our guidance, which is published on our website, where we would then expect the product to bring a meaningful improvement of efficacy and on obviously clinically relevant endpoints. So eligibility to PRIME is expected to be based on a scientific justification. This can be broken down in two parts. So first, there is a need for the applicant to justify that there is an unmet medical need in the proposed indication, and by discussing relevant data from the epidemiology of the disease and description of what is available, what are the available treatments. And then as a second part, to explain how the product has the potential to significantly address the unmet medical need. And this is by describing the effects observed from the non-clinical perspective and the clinical perspective when available, and how the product will bring a major therapeutic advantage and meaningful improvement to patients. So depending on the stage, obviously, the early proof of principle entry or the proof of concept, the level of data will be different. And as I'll explain, the justification submitted by applicants is then assessed by our scientific committees. We have a template on our website to help you prepare your applications. And so these are, again, prepared from first a short background on the disease and the product. We expect to have an overview and justification around the unmet medical need, as I explained, and then the supporting evidence, non-clinical, and then the clinical data, usually, as I explained, exploratory efficacy and information on the safety data that is available to date. And in conclusion, we expect applicants to justify how the product brings a major therapeutic or is of major public health interest. And overall, by replying to those two questions, is there an unmet medical need, and does the product have the potential to significantly address it and bring this new option potentially to patients? When it comes to this non-clinical aspect and the proof of principle entry, there is some elements in our guidance that you may refer to. As I indicated before, for this early stage, we expect to have, first of all, a sound pharmacological rationale and a convincing scientific concept. But we want to highlight that solely a new mechanism of action or a new target is not sufficient. There is a need to have a strong rationale behind it, and there is a need to have relevant non-clinical data showing effects either in vitro and in vivo in relevant models. So if there have been treatments previously authorized in that indication, then a comparison of the non-clinical results on those relevant models to those existing products is obviously expected and would help supporting your justification. The effects observed have to be, from this early entry point of view, compelling and sufficiently large to justify that at this very early stage of development, the non-clinical data only shows indication that the clinical effect expected is going to bring potentially a major therapeutic advantage. And finally, one point is that although your justification will be based on non-clinical data, we still want these products at that stage to have gone through the sort of first hurdle of first-in-man trial, and we expect in your application, especially for those where the first-in-man have not been conducted in patients, that we still have indication of tolerability, but also as well some indication that the pharmacokinetics in healthy volunteers or patients, if you have data, is able to confirm that the effects you are observing in non-clinical are going to somehow be translated in men because you reach a sufficient exposure. So this is something to consider as well when you consider the timing of your application, that non-clinical only is too early for PRIME. You still need to have this first-in-man data available to support your application at this proof of principle stage. The eligibility request is a very short procedure, 40-day procedure, and it goes through different working parties and committees. So upon receipt of your request, there will be a quick sort of check by EMA to make sure that you are within the scope of PRIME, the correct time and the correct amount of data required. The justification is then reviewed and a report prepared by EMA and a scientific advice working party member. And each report then is discussed at the Scientific Advice Working Party, which provides recommendations. If it's an ATMP, the CAT is also involved. And ultimately, the CHMP is adopting recommendation either to grant or deny eligibility to PRIME. It is quite a lean procedure, and there is no step for questions or interactions with the company. So you will receive a confirmation of the start of procedure, and you will receive a final outcome letter summarizing the reasons why it is accepted or rejected. For products that are accepted to PRIME, if this hasn't been confirmed before, there will also be confirmation that you are indeed eligible to the centralized procedure, which ultimately is needed for you to benefit from one of the main incentives, the rapporteur appointment. So this will be done simultaneously. So this is quite a short process, 40 days to involve 2 to 3 committees, and but we have gone through this for several months now. Then in terms of transparency, one important point is that with PRIME, we publish a monthly report after each CHMP meeting, so the week following the adoption of the outcomes, which you can find also on the PRIME webpage. And in there, we provide high-level characteristics. We provide whether the product is a chemical, biological, advanced therapy, the therapeutic area, the therapeutic indication, and the type of data that was submitted, whether it was non-clinical or clinical exploratory data, for example, and the type of companies, SMEs, academic or other. Only for those that are granted eligibility will we publish the name of the product, or the INN, or the active substance, or the company code, which one is available. And on our webpage, you will see high-level statistics that are also updated every month. Here on this slide, you see the latest one. So from all the applications that have been assessed to date, so all those received as of the end of June, so from March to June, you can see that we have received 48 applications. We had 4 applications that were out of scope. So as I explained before, prior to starting, those were either too early, possibly submitted with insufficient level of evidence at that stage. And you can see that we have about a bit more than 20% product granted out of all of those that have been assessed. You have the breakdown on the left by type of applicant. So there is, among the products granted, there is about an equal split between SMEs and others. But overall, we have seen quite a lot of interest, and we're very pleased to have seen a lot of interest from SMEs. And amongst the therapeutic area distribution, as we expected and as reflected as well in the number of and the breakdown in marketing authorization application, a high presence on the oncology field as well. So then this was the part on the eligibility request, but then what happens once a product is eligible to Prime, which is the main goal of submitting a request. So first of all, the following months, there will be the appointment of the rapporteur. So as soon as the eligibility is granted, we trigger the process of nominating the rapporteurs with our committee. And so a company granted eligibility will receive the subsequent months the nomination of the CHMP rapporteur. And upon this, we would then be in touch with the company to organize the kickoff meeting. I'll provide you a bit more information on this. And what we expect as well, as we said before, is that we rely on the existing tool, and one of the tools to provide guidance to companies is the scientific advice. So we would then expect companies to interact with the network through the scientific advice procedure. So the kickoff meeting is a very interesting and important feature of the scheme. We have set up this meeting to be a multidisciplinary meeting. So shortly after eligibility, so from our experience so far, we managed to organize this meeting within about 2-3 months from the eligibility. So we will be in contact with the company to prepare such meeting, and we tailor the participation and involve relevant members from the Scientific Advice Working Party, CHMP. The rapporteur will be present, but we also involve members from the Pediatric Committee, the Orphan Medicinal Products Committee. So it's in order to have a really relevant expertise to guide the companies towards future interactions with the EU network, not only the rapporteur, but the whole of the different regulatory interactions you may have throughout the development. And the objective is first to have an initial introduction with the applicant and to enable you to present your development plan and steps to come, and facilitate this first introduction, but also mainly to discuss the overall strategy, and then try to flag already potential issues that need to be addressed prior to marketing authorization application. So it can be from agreeing on the next scientific advice and topic that are really of importance to be tackled through scientific advice, or discussing interactions with the pediatric committee in order to make sure a PIP is prepared prior to the marketing authorization application. So this is the objective of this meeting, is not in itself to give scientific advice and discuss particular technical or scientific issue, but to guide applicants towards raising the right questions at the right time and interacting with the regulatory network in the most efficient way possible. And then, as I said, an important feature and tool to use through Prime is the scientific advice. So we expect that the major issues, those that are really key to prepare for your marketing authorization application, are directed to the Scientific Advice Working Party and CHMP. And there is this expectation possibly to have a higher frequency, which is why also we have made sure that there are fee waivers for Prime products that to enable to interact frequently with the Scientific Advice Working Party. And through the scientific advice, we aim to have a continuity, and this is also ensured by having one of the scientific advice coordinator consistently following each of the advice from the product up to the marketing authorization. The rapporteur is also appointed at the time of proof of concept, and the rapporteur obviously will greatly help in the continuity of the life cycle approach and guide the applicants towards the tools and also follow closely the scientific advice through their relevant members at the working party. So all this knowledge gained from the rapporteur side will also be of importance when it comes to assessing the marketing authorization application under the accelerated time frame. So in summary, the main goal of Prime is, as I indicated at the beginning, to support the development of medicines of major public health interest and that target unmet medical need. And for these, we see products that will bring a major therapeutic advantage over existing therapies or for patients with no treatment options. And Prime is mainly based on early proactive interactions through scientific and regulatory support from EMA and the network, with the view to help optimize the preparation of the marketing authorization application and ultimately have an accelerated assessment of your marketing authorization application. But the ultimate goal, obviously, is that those patients will benefit from those therapies that will significantly improve their quality of life as early as possible possible by optimizing the development. And the last two slides are links to our webpage on Prime, where you will find further information. And also to highlight that depending on the timing of development, obviously Prime may not be the right tool if it's too early or too close to the marketing authorization, but the EMA can still provide support through the many tools that we have, including the SME office, obviously, and additional guidance we may provide through our offices. So I think this was the conclusion. Thank you.